Is December 11th, 2024. And of course, there's all kinds of news taking place in the world and around the world. And we'll be talking about that on this particular day. And we'll see who joins us, if anybody. But definitely, it's a rainy day here in Durham, North Carolina. But we'll see what's happening around the world and in world news and all along those lines. There's definitely a lot is taking place in every place from Europe to Asia to a number of other places as well. South Korea's ex defense minister attempts to take his own life as presidential office is raided in martial law fallout. So, definitely, that's one of the things that is going on. And North Korea condemns South Korea as fascist dictatorship after martial law. So, definitely, that is something going on in the world as well. And inside Syria's Sadniyaya prison, and the GOP is considering how to push the Trump agenda. So that's something that folks are talking about as well. And definitely, there's trying to find some of the disappeared in that Syrian former slaughterhouse. So even CNN went inside the slaughterhouse prison as desperate families look for missing loved ones. So definitely, that is something going on as well. And Syria's post-Assad vacuum has become a shooting range for great powers. So definitely, there are folks that are trying to figure out what's going to happen next in Syria and all along those lines. So it'll be definitely interesting to see how this all plays out. And Afghan refugee minister Khalil or Rahman Haqqani killed in a blast. So Afghan blast kills key minister, shocking the Taliban. And suicide bombing in Kabul is what was going on as it kills the Taliban refugee minister. So definitely, that's something else going on in the world. And Syrians celebrate the fall of Assad as Israel strikes nearly 500 targets. And France urges Israel to withdraw from Syria buffer zone and respect Syria's sovereignty. So that's something else going on. And Israel did confirm an attack on the naval fleet in Latakia. So definitely, we're seeing a lot of things going on in that space as well. And Kamani says the U.S. and Israel were behind the fall of Syrian regime. He also alludes to Turkey. So Assad downfall was planned by U.S. and Israel, claims Iran's supreme leader. So definitely looks like Iran suffered a blow of historic proportions with Assad's fall in Syria. So definitely, that's something else that folks are talking about in the news. An Israeli airstrike kills at least 38 Palestinians in Gaza, medics say. So Israel strike on home in North Gaza kills 19 people, according to what medics have said. So definitely, that's something else that is going on in the news as well. And China says it takes necessary measures to defend sovereignty over Taiwan. China's maritime movements around Taiwan are largest in decades, Taipei says. So China stages largest show of force in decades after the U.S. visit by Taiwan's Lei. So definitely, there's even some kind of battle of minds and battle of wits going on in that space as well. So definitely, a lot of folks are paying attention to that and seeing what's going on in that kind of space. So definitely, and folks are still talking about Argentina, where college graduates are turning on Malay after helping him win power. And a year in, they're definitely some folks are saying Argentina is the country inspiring Elon Musk's Doge, and folks are looking at how it has performed under its leadership, under its new president, and all along those lines. So, like I said, there's a lot going on around the world and in world news. So let's see what's happening in the U.S., and then I'll bring in whoever we've got with us, and all along those lines. Well, I see I've got Nick with me, so Nick will be joining me. We'll see if anybody else joins as well in the very short time and everything. But the United Healthcare CEO killing latest, Luigi Maggiano lawyer, has seen no evidence linking his client to the shooting. So we'll see if this is the case or not. Apparently, the suspect referenced filmmaker Michael Moore and New York Times reporter in a manifesto and everything. So definitely, we'll see whether this trial goes and how it goes and a judge blocked the Onion purchase of Alex Jones Infowars. So judge rejects the sale of Infowars to satirical news site The Onion. So that was rejected by a federal bankruptcy judge and all along those lines. And Malibu wildfires surrounded Dick Van Dyke's home. The 98-year-old star is safely evacuated. Also understand that I believe Cher had to get out of her home as well and everything like that. So there have been thousands of evacuations and in that space. And Caitlin Clark was named Times Athlete of the Year. And apparently the Voice crowned a winner. But it's coming back to Malibu. It looks like 18,000 Malibu area residents faced evacuation as red flag fire warnings persist. So Representative Nancy Mace says she was physically accosted on Capitol grounds. So a suspect was arrested after Representative Nancy Mace claims that she was assaulted and all along those lines. And Trump picks Kimberly Guilfoyle, his son's fiance, as ambassador to Greece. So definitely that'll be interesting to see what goes on in that space. But he's still picking folks for various jobs and all along those lines. I'm still trying to figure out, and maybe Nick's got some theories about this, but apparently there is a target, and I think they're saying it's coming from the one of the mafias. I'm not sure which mafia and everything toward athletes, because I know Joe Burrow's home was burglarized right after he beat Dallas and everything, and they had already burglarized the homes of Patrick Mahomes and a couple of basketball players, as well as Travis Kelce. And there was some speculation that it was being done by some sort of mafia ties, that they're going after athletes for whatever reason. And Daniel Penny breaks his silence on the Subway Chuck Hole case. I was in a very vulnerable position after acquittal in Subway Chuck Hole trial. Daniel Penny says he was vulnerable in the encounter, and he sat down with Judge Pirro and says nearly threatened to kill Subway riders. So definitely looks like he's speaking out and all along those lines. New Jersey state senator calls for limited state of emergency over the mysterious drones that are going on in that particular state here in the United States and all along those lines. And Joe Biden calls himself stupid for not doing one Donald Trump thing. So Biden points to Trump's trick with COVID stimulus checks. So Trump is also promising fully expedited approvals and permits to billionaire investors in the U.S. So definitely it looks like Biden also addressed critics and defended his economy. So he was defending the way that the economy is going and all along those lines. And apparently Trump allies are racing to snuff out GOP dissent in the Senate. So we'll see how this plays out and if folks have to think that this is a good thing or a not good thing and all along those lines. So like I said, there's a number of things happening in the world, both internationally and here in the U.S., even some things that are going on in the business community and all along those lines. So we'll definitely be talking about a number of those kind of things going on and all in that space. Matter of fact, one of the articles I saw yesterday says that the PayPal mafia is taking over America's government. So I guess we've got a couple of folks that are associated with PayPal that are among those that are getting jobs and all along those lines. But definitely it'll be very interesting to see how everything from the things going on in the economy to other things going on. And as a matter of fact, the annual inflation rate accelerated to 2.7% in November as expected. Inflation heated up last month as consumer prices rose 2.7%, underscoring the slog ahead. So we might be heading into some sluggish periods and all along those lines. So they said the Dow, the S&P 500, NASDAQ jumped higher as CPI inflation meets the mark. So we'll see how this all goes on. And a Macy employee who hid $151 million in delivery expenses was trying to mask the initial mistake. So Macy's did a probe and found the employee acted alone in a $151 million accounting scandal. So that's something else going on as well. So definitely and apparently there's a new quantum leap. So Google is talking about Meet Willow, our state-of-the-art quantum chip. So Google makes new quantum computing breakthrough. So they say that their new quantum chip indicates that multiple universes exist. So we'll see if that's the case or not the case. Speaking of multiple universes, as I get ready to bring in both Nick and Rick Rosner, I've actually got a question for Nick and everything along those lines, and then we'll get to some of these topics and everything like that. Oh, he's got that Donald Duck voice going again, so I've got to have Nick his voice or whatever's going on because there's like a little gurgle thing going on, but we'll see what's going on in that space and everything. So he'll be back and everything. So hopefully he'll come back and I can ask him the question when he comes back and all along those lines. How are you doing, Rick?
All right, barely awake.
Barely awake? Why are you barely awake? That's right. Well, we haven't
I stayed up till 4 a.m. last night, which was only 3 hours ago, LA time.
It was only 3 hours ago, LA time. Yeah, that's true.
I stay up. I do these little stupid crafts projects, like I'm restoring this micro mosaic here, where you take tiny pieces of glass and you glue them back into the places where they fell out, which is a ridiculous waste of my time, but I like doing it.
Well, that could be a waste of your time. Hey, Nick, I'm glad you're back. I have a question for you because early this morning I was up late in the morning, like Rick, and I didn't have much else to do. So I was watching old TV shows. I was watching Law and Order and SUV. I think that's the one I was watching and everything. And then after that came on, there was a new show that I had not seen that featured Bravo, and it actually featured one of your identity markers, and all along those lines, we all have different identity markers, whether you're from the South, you're from Spain, you're from this religion or that religion and everything. But apparently there is so I need to know if we're going to start one here on Pod TV, because apparently there's a new show that features the Mormon community and everything along those lines. And there are a couple of these, but it's a reality show that features, so I think we need to get a show that's going to be featuring you and Max, and we're going to call it sold on what is it called? What's the name of your company? National Pension Fund. So sold in NPF and everything, because they've got a reality show that features 6 folks affiliated with the Mormon religion and everything, called Sold in SLC, Sold in Salt Lake City. So it features a woman that used to be connected to the church, that's no longer connected to the church, or she stepped away, and she is a billionaire type investment lady in real estate. She has one that features 6 real estate brokers, and they're all going around showing how they're selling their houses, but they also have the conflicts that most reality shows have. There's a African American woman that is lesbian that also used to belong to the church as well, and then there are like 4 or 5 others. And like I said, I didn't watch the full episode, but in the 30 to 40 minutes that I watched, I was going like, this is a reality show set in Utah. I've got to ask Nick if he knows about this show, because it's on Bravo, and I think it's fairly new, and also if he's going to start a show himself with Max and everything like that. Because, like I said, it was quite fascinating. It was a typical reality show where there was conflicts, people that didn't like each other, and all of that stuff. But I'm thinking that we need to get one from the pension fund.
So the key to, let Nick go. But
it's real simple. The answer is no. I'm not going to watch it, and no, I'm not interested. Go on.
So the key to a good spicy reality show is to tell the people you're casting that you're casting them because they're fascinating, but really you're casting the biggest assholes you can find.
And I'll go on further. Most of the people, Mark, they're horrible. I mean, I'm on all the podcast websites trying to recruit people, and people say, I'm going to start a podcast. They don't have a clue what they're doing. They just go, I'm just going to start one. They don't have a topic, which is really important. They don't have a plan, which is really important. They don't have a plan for distribution, which is really important. So they're just all of a sudden, hey, I'm just an average guy. I'm going to show up and start doing a podcast.
Well, and this wasn't even a podcast. This was actually a TV series. Bravo picked it up and everything.
I agree with Rick. What happens, they find the loonies that are fringe people, and they recruit them. Hey, speaking, we got a fringe guy coming in right now. Because unless you get loony fringe people on TV, here's a loony fringe person. Unless you get loony fringe people on TV.
I just looked it up. There are 4 points.
I had to come in. Firstly, I came in because Toby wasn't here, and I thought maybe I'd get the chance to finish saying what I was trying to say yesterday. But secondly, Nick, I mean, the way that this network runs, for you to say that other podcasters don't have a clue, I mean, the idea that this network is going to hold itself out as being a place for everybody to come together and then constantly harass and bully anybody who's sent to write off the network is ridiculous.
Wait, you're looking at one show, Shaquille. We have 50 shows, like 50 shows. And you show up to like couple of them. You know, there's like about 45 shows you don't show up on. And
And those shows are full of right wingers, are they?
no, they have nothing to do with politics. The thing is that's the thing is.
But there is a common theme. There is a common theme of the kind of person that shows up on those shows.
No, it's not politically oriented. So your complaints, which just that doesn't seem to stop, have to do with one or two shows.
Well, I'll tell you when they'll stop. I'll tell you when they'll stop. When your network president does something about her friends mouthing off at me, when she stops taking me backstage, when Jacoby gets told to stop interrupting me and allowing me to speak, then I'll stop complaining about it.
Okay,
when the other guests that have been complaining about it start coming back because things have improved, then we'll stop complaining.
And I appreciate that, but the thing is, what you don't know about yourself is you talk a lot. Which, by the way, Shaquille, that's great for TV. We have a new show that's going to be coming in. It's VC Masters. It's about venture capitalists, venture capitalists, and it's startups with venture capitalists. It's out of Duke University. Okay. The first thing I told them, I said, I don't like dead air, and their answer was, "What's dead air? Dead air is this."
Exactly.
Which is why 4 years.
You don't have any.
Which is why 4.5 years ago you asked me to make sure that there wasn't dead air. But there's a big difference between covering dead air and having someone say, "Don't interrupt me, but I'm entitled to interrupt you because I don't like what you're saying." Right, and you guys accepting that, and here I am being invited onto other podcasts where I'm getting, the smallest show I did has had 700,000 views. I'm averaging over 1 million views per episode, and I come on here and I can't even finish a sentence. I've got to sometimes try over 2 or 3 shows to finish a thing that I wanted to say 3 shows beforehand. Don't you think that's a little bit ridiculous?
Like I said, you can go ahead and...
That's the nature of the show. But I'll also tell you this. There's a lot of people that are critical of this particular show. And I've had people come on saying, "I'm not going to come back again." They're not your friends. They're other people. But only because it's a very contentious show. Speaking of contentious, we need to bring somebody else on who has no problem with contention because he's a...
Let me finish the point I was making before.
Well, I'll head off, because if he's coming on, there's no chance of me being able to finish what I was trying to say yesterday.
Hold on. So let me finish my point. I looked up, there are more than 4 million podcasts worldwide. So just having a podcast is a ticket to nothing. So I agree with you, Nick, that most people with podcasts don't know, including myself. I don't even know, what I have.
A lot of people don't know their numbers. I don't necessarily know mine. Adam, one of the things I was teasing actually before we got into this whole conversation.
You've got someone like Joel Jamal that shows up on the show, who is one of the leading podcasters in Australia, who has people who actually show up on Australian TV on his show. And you guys don't even want to invite him back because Jacoby doesn't like him, right? Joel gets tens of millions of views a month, and you guys don't want to have me back on the network. How ridiculous is that?
Well, like I said,
you guys aren't even rebroadcasting the freedom. You guys aren't even rebroadcasting the Freedom Fridays show, which was originally set up because after complaints from Adam, Dan, and many others who haven't told you who they are about the conduct of this show, we were told to go start one ourselves. So we did. And we get more views on that sitting in Australia. We deliberately haven't broadcast into the US because the agreement was that we'd broadcast it onto pod, and you guys won't replay the shows.
Well, first off, if you send it to me, then it'll get replayed. It's the same with Sharif. I haven't got the tape.
Take it up with your network. Take it up with your network president.
I can't talk over Mark. See, this is the problem with this show, is everybody talks over me.
Well, no second, Nick. The only thing I was saying was that they send me the document.
You complain you can't get a word in edgewise. I can't get a word in edgewise. Okay? So the thing is, it's not personal. But a couple things. Number one, since I don't produce this show, if you have this guy, Jamel, who's a real big, send him to me. I'll put him on the media show, which I do produce. Number two, if you do have a show that wants to be rebroadcast on TV, send it to me and I'll give it to Sean, because Sean does all the redistribution.
Right.
Mark doesn't.
Well,
do it.
we'll discuss this backstage, Nick, because I've had this conversation with you, Mark, and the network president. I had this conversation with you 3 times in the last 6 months, okay, and nothing has happened.
That's
Now
because
I'm going to finish.
Okay,
Now
so
I'm going to finish what I was trying to say yesterday.
I've not received one thing from this what you're talking about. Not one thing. If you send it to me,
We'll discuss it backstage. But we'll discuss it backstage.
I'll forward it on to Sean. We'll get it on Roku.
Yeah.
Okay, no problems. But we'll discuss it backstage. Now, if I can finish what I was trying to say,
Finish what you were
Rick
trying to say
yesterday.
yesterday.
So, Rick, as I was saying, I went to an Anglican school, okay? And when I finished high school, I didn't really know anything about the Jewish religion, just using that as an example. I honestly was under the impression that the Jewish religion was just the Old Testament, that was it. That I didn't know about the Torah. I knew nothing about the Jewish religion, or really most other religions, okay? It would be ridiculous for my family, the Muslim side of my family, to march down to a private Christian school and demand that they teach all the kids Islam, or that they teach all the kids, Jewry, or they teach all the kids Hinduism, or whatever, right? That would be ridiculous. I think that's exactly the same logic that parents are trying to use in relation to the trans issues. If children are suffering from this issue and they can't work out if they're a boy or a girl, and they think that they should use pronouns like clown and clown self, and demon self, and cat self, and fairy self, and none of us are supposed to question that, that's fine. But not every child should have to go through learning all of that, especially if their parents don't agree. That's all I would say about the trans issue.
It's the trans stuff that shows up at a school mostly doesn't show up in the classroom with teachers teaching about it. It mostly shows up in the interactions among the other kids, some of whom have decided to be or are trans, and some who are questioning their gender or their sexuality. It's not like, I mean, especially at like public schools where they have no money for anything, no money for band, no money for shop, no money for choir, then they're not going to have any money to have a class in sexuality. It's the other kids.
I know this is the position that everybody who's on the progressive side or liberal side or whatever keeps trying to take, that it's just not being taught in schools. And maybe you're right. Maybe the right wingers are blowing it out of proportion. I don't think so. And the reason I don't think so is because we have seen TikTok video after TikTok video. We have seen complaints. We have seen senators like Senator Kennedy from Louisiana jump up and read books at Senate inquiries talking about what's in these books. We've seen that schools, just like most big corporations, have celebrated pride flags. You've got kindergarten kids. We've got reports that kindergarten kids are drawing the pride flag, that classrooms have got big pride flags and hardly any American flags, or a little small American flag in the corner, or Australian flag in the corner in this country. This is what we're hearing. And what we're supposed to believe is that when we go and talk to our friends who've got children, that's happening at their schools. It's happening at our nieces and nephews' schools, but it's not happening in America. It's not happening anywhere in America. It's not happening when Randy Weinstein actually talks about making sure that this is a part of the school curriculum. When people start talking about drag queen story time, and we see news articles that say that there's talk of making that compulsory, the rest of us are supposed to sit there and say, oh, no, that's not happening.
Nobody's making drag queen story time compulsory. A lot of this is part of a right-wing push to
there is a push in
school boards.
There is a push here in Australia for drag queen story time to be compulsory.
We can't speak for Australia. We're not in Australia like you are.
Find me a link. Find me. All right. Randy Weinberg.
We established this a couple of years ago, but I'm happy to send you that link. Sure.
Just send the link and everything. Just really quickly, because
when a school librarian, plus like school libraries are dying. Like nobody goes to the library anymore. Literally, like my wife used to bring home books from her school because the library was getting rid of books because people haven't checked them out in 30 years. The kids do not read books.
That's not really the point that's being brought up here. Is whether they're reading books.
I didn't get to my point yet. When some school librarian puts genderqueer in the school library without looking at it, and they probably should, and then the right wingers are like, well, you've got a book in your library that has a drawing of a kid blowing another kid, then you got that's the book you guys ride in on, that everything is trans and everything is queer and everything is pride. It's
the reason for that, Rick, if we're actually honest about this situation, the reason for that is not because right wingers just lost their mind. Because I'll remind you that a very big part of what is considered to be the MAGA movement around the world today, because there's a similar sort of sentiment around the world, are made up of people that were formerly on the left, made up of moderate leftists that have become so disillusioned with centre-left political parties, they've jumped ship. So I don't think it's a big right-wing conspiracy. What happens is that a book comes out or something comes out, people complain about it, their complaints get ignored. They get told that they're racist and sexist and misogynistic and transphobic and homophobic, etc., etc. Okay? And then the left jumps behind to defend these books, and then they turn it and say, well, you're just trying to burn books. You're just trying to get rid of books. That's what ends up happening. And we've seen that time and time again. And just like the great wisdom of The View, one of the panelists there talked about why Trump won the last election. It's because when people were screaming about crime, the left said, let's just defund the police. When people were screaming about the border being open, people were being told that you're just racist and there was not a problem. So this is what's happened. The left has not just ignored the issue, but it's actually defended the issue. It's a bit rich for them now to say, oh, well, actually it's just a right-wing conspiracy theory. They're just jumping onto these things. You guys are defending it instead of doing something about it, and that's how it got blown out of control.
I had a question for Adam, and it was based on what I just asked Nick earlier, because I was teasing him about a show and everything. So I hear what you're saying, Shaquille, and this is my question for Adam. Do we sometimes, when we do the various shows, and not just here on the network, but just in general, do we sometimes try to make sure that everybody is represented? Because one of the things I said was that I literally stumbled on a show yesterday, was not planning on watching it, called Sold in SLC. It's a reality show that is Mormon based and everything, that's about real estate. Literally, it's about big time real estate, $1 billion real estate deals. But I could tell that they had one person that was intentionally, kind of like Rick said, the asshole, the owner is a woman owner and everything. They definitely went for the beauty aspect, but they did go for what a lot of shows do. They went for a trifecta, because they had a African-American woman who was also lesbian in a relationship and everything like that. So if you know anything, and we've talked on the show about affirmative action and everything, they can tick her off for the show, because they can say that they've got one African-American, they've got another woman, because I think it was about half and half, might have been 4 and 2 and everything, that I'm thinking about the show, meaning 4 women and 2 guys and everything. And they can also say that they've got somebody that represents the LGBT community, so they can and a parent, so they can tick her off on several different categories in the way that they do their marketing. And this is a Bravo show and everything, but I'm thinking, hey, they might not even have liked the woman all that much, but they were able to get somebody that was going to mark off 3 different categories.
Sure, that's why you see biracial couples in a ton of ads, so you can hit more demographics at once. I want to go back to what Shaq said, which is...
I think the question is for Adam, but go on.
Sorry, I forgot that.
Adam?
Well, if what you're alluding to about this show is, does it welcome diverse perspectives, the answer to that question is no. And we have seen that play out over the last couple of months, where people who have different viewpoints, not necessarily right-wing viewpoints, but moderate viewpoints, or who present different facts and different solutions, have been personally attacked, demeaned, and denigrated. Not by you, Mark, but by other panelists. And I think that's very unfortunate, because the purpose is not just to have people with different opinions. It's to have people with different opinions who can actually express them and have a constructive dialogue. And I think you've tried to do that. But the conduct of some panelists has precluded that. And it has also led several individuals who are conservatives not to want to be on the show, and for good reason. And I think that that's unfortunate because we're supposed to live in a democratic society where diversity of viewpoint contributes to a marketplace of ideas. In the last couple of months on this show, sadly, the conduct of some has made that impossible.
But if you look at it from another viewpoint, counselor, all right, have you ever seen The View on TV? Probably not. But if you ever see it,
Yes, I've seen The View many times, but I have
it's all left wing. It's not.
No, the view is 4-1.
No, it's not 4-1.
Well, if you're
a doormat, don't give me it's a 4-1, Rick. You have 4 and 1 doormat.
Well, if your goal is to have a show,
let me ask you this: have you ever seen Fox?
Yeah, well, the 5 is 4-1 conservatives.
It's all a bunch of
Sorry,
conservatives.
but Nick,
So
Nick, that is precisely what you guys actually told us when we were first invited back in 2020. We were told that you didn't want to be like Fox and you didn't want to be like The View, that what you wanted to do was to bring people from different viewpoints. When I first came on in my former role as the president of one of the chambers of commerce, I came on to advocate for small businesses and for the sorts of things that would help small businesses achieve things. I started being named as a Donald Trump supporter when one of our former hosts started making comments that were very, very biased against Donald Trump and asking me to respond to it. And I said, look, I don't want to get involved in politics here, and you're being a little bit slanted in the way you're reporting things. And from that day forth, it just came out that I was some big right-wing maniac. As somebody who promotes small businesses, who has had small businesses and has had success from those small businesses, obviously I'm going to advocate for smaller taxes and lower regulations. Now, if I'm not welcome here, that's fine. But then Pod TV should come out and openly say, we do not want centre-right political views. We are only after progressive views on World Edition. If that's not the case, then something should be done about it. And I think that's what I am trying to say.
I think I need to speak here and raise an issue. Like I said, diversity of perspective, in my view, is important because we want to respectfully disagree and give people different perspectives. But what I've seen in the last couple of months is people be personally attacked and demeaned and degraded for having opinions that don't comport with their own. I have seen dozens and dozens of vicious messages written behind my back, attacking me and threatening my job and my career by those who do not agree with me. And if you saw those text messages, you would be shocked. That's not going to foster constructive debate. That's going to foster division. And these are the very people that preach inclusion. And the reason I haven't come on the show as much is because I was very, very shocked and hurt that some panelists would, behind my back, write messages to other people, viciously insulting me and threatening to call
Let's not go any further. Let's not go any further with that, Adam.
What?
Let's not go any further with that because we don't want to reveal who sent you the messages.
I'm not going to reveal anybody because I respect everyone on the show and I would never reveal people's confidences. At the same time, though, okay, and I'm not talking about you, Shaq. Believe me, I have the messages sent directly to me. And I think that that's really, really unfortunate because this is a great show with a lot of smart people and we should have mutual respect and civil discourse because that's what the audience deserves and that's what each person on this panel deserves because each person has a viewpoint that's worthy of respect. I have disagreed with Shaq many times. I've disagreed with Rick. I've disagreed with Nick. I am not a Republican or a Democrat. I listen. I have an open mind. But it's hard to exercise your right to free speech when you're attacked for it. That's so antithetical to what our constitutional republic and what our democracy requires.
Well,
so, Adam, how do you feel about Taylor Lorenz's comments on Piers Morgan's show?
Well, I can't hear what anybody's saying because Nick and Shaq were just
talking. When I talk, Shaquille overtalks me, and he does that with a lot of people.
There is a delay. I started speaking, and then I stopped speaking when I heard you talking. All right, there is a delay. I'm in Australia at the moment. You're in Spain. As soon as I heard you talking, I stopped.
Okay. So, what on this show, what I've seen is, and what I like about it is, on some episodes, you have Rick presenting his point of view. You have Kim presenting her point of view. You have Nick, Shaq, and me presenting our point of view. I think that's a good thing. I like to hear from people who disagree with me and who do so respectfully. When it gets into the realm of personally attacking and threatening people, though, like I said, that's disappointing because everybody on this show, good people, successful, smart people. I think we can rise above this because this show can be really something special. But recently, I think it's had some challenges, but I hope we can overcome them.
Okay. All right.
Nick, what was your question for me?
Taylor Lorenz.
So my question was, how do you? Sorry, Nick.
Okay. My thought is very simple. All right. If you look at major media, you either have all left wings or all right wings. You don't have right and left together. Part of the reason they probably don't do that, it degenerates into the ad hominem fighting that we're experiencing on World Edition. And because of that, and I'm just telling you what I see major media does. They don't have mixed shows. It's either The View and everybody's to the left, or it's Fox and everybody's to the right, but they never bring left and right together because if so, it degenerates into what we have, which is ad hominem.
And Nick, that is what makes us different. And that is what makes us appealing.
But as you know, Adam, lawyers are trained to argue. Regular individuals are not. That's the reason Lawyers Den actually worked because, for the most part,
I would agree with that. Yeah, that was a great show, and I miss it.
Well, that's a show we plan on selling to major media right now. We're in January. Okay,
well,
because that concept actually works. But the real problem is we have a lot of people that aren't trained to talk and to shut up. Okay, at the right time. In other words, give and go. And so because of that, we end up with this thing that you see right now on World Edition and World Politics, which is what one commentator called a food fight.
Yeah, well, I think that can be fixed because I think we're all reasonable people, and I think we're all smart people. And I think Rick, Shaq, Kim, Nick, Mark, you all have something valuable to contribute, and we can still be friends even though we disagree and set an example that differentiates us from other media and that demonstrates to the audience that you can disagree, be civil, and still have a constructive debate that informs people, entertains people, and contributes to public discourse meaningfully.
Yeah, okay, now here's another argument. We're all smart people. I was just going through a bunch of our shows, and the average person that we have doing shows or on shows have like master degrees or PhD degrees or medical doctor degrees, like no kidding. All right, generally, the people that are smart and well-educated don't do well in media because they do not relate to the average Joe. So here's a real problem with our network. We do not have a lot of people that relate to Joe Poolhall. Period. The end.
Well, people need media.
What is the basis for your statement? I grew up in a blue-collar family. I think a lot of us came from working-class backgrounds. I think we're all decent people. And I think we offer opinions and solutions that relate to the struggles of the average American person. So, Rick, where am I going wrong here? Or Nick?
Yeah, but
well, I'd like to jump in if I may.
People need practice to do well on shows like this. Kimmel, before he went on TV, he spent 15 years in radio. So and gave him light. I mean, he was smart and witty.
Well, Rick, there are certain parameters that you can follow even as a beginner that will maximize your value on the show, such as limiting what you say to 60 seconds, never interrupting, never engaging in personal attacks, so that people can have an equal and fair opportunity to share different perspectives and disagree respectfully.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'd like to jump in on this.
Do that if you drop him with no experience onto his show.
I'd like to jump in on this if I can.
I don't
Firstly,
understand how that's an easy thing to follow. Go ahead, Shaq.
Hold on a second, Shaquille.
So Jessica Tarlov, when she goes on the Five, and other people when they go on Five, like Harold Ford Jr., they sit in the Liberal seat. And whilst, yes, the panel is very much against them or their viewpoints, they do get the opportunity to speak. The same thing with The View, right? It's a little bit more heated. Piers Morgan, which is something I would like to discuss in a minute, Piers Morgan brings people from wildly different viewpoints onto his show, and they do get into some tit-a-tat arguments. What you don't have happen, though, on any of those shows is a guest or a panelist that says somebody's name over and over and over, doesn't let them speak, interrupts them and says that it's okay for them to be interrupted, but it's not okay for them to be interrupted, right? And then have somebody with administrative controls type things representing the network's positions, and then take certain people backstage and mute people repeatedly. And on some shows, so much so that the system crashed. You don't see that happen on other networks. And I actually think it's a legitimate complaint. I also think it's a legitimate complaint that when we say, okay, we're going to limit our time to 60 seconds, and some panelists will hold up a clock or a stopwatch while you're talking, right, cutting you off, and then goes and proceeds to talk for 3 or 4 minutes, right? Or being told by network people here that this should be a round robin, and so you sit back quietly on a show waiting for your turn, and you're the only person on that day who's not on a progressive side, and the round robin consists of everybody except for you getting 3 and 4 and 5 chances to speak, and then at the 58-minute mark you get a question and you try to respond to it. Oh, look, you get interrupted, and oh, sorry, we've got to end the show. That is not a round robin. And those complaints are totally valid. And as I've said, and I'm going to say it until I'm blue in the face, this dynamic has destroyed what this show used to be. And I think it should be changed, because I think we've lost a lot of viewers. I've got people that I don't know that somehow find my details and send me emails and messages asking me why I'm even bothering to show up on the show. Okay. And I don't think that's a good look for this network.
I mean, first off, we've spent 45 minutes on a whining session and everything like that. It's supposed to be World Edition, it's supposed to be World News. We're supposed to be talking about world news events and everything.
Well, let's go.
Hold on a second. This has been a whining session. We've had a couple of these in the past and all along those lines and everything. And the person that y'all are mostly whining about isn't even here to defend their point of view or their views and everything along those lines. But whether it's, and we could go into a whole show. Nick knows this as well as I do, because there have been tons of people that have left, both on the left, on the right, and everywhere else in between, that have left for various reasons. I don't know why the Asian crew isn't here. I don't know why the Indian medical crew isn't here, even though I have some ideas of why they aren't here because of some.
Mark, I have a solution.
There was a group of people who you do know why they aren't here, and they've told you guys very, very clearly and have been telling you guys for years. Now, I would like to move on to Piers Morgan, a question that I was starting to ask Adam about.
Well, I would say I have a solution to this. Look, I think, like I said, we're all reasonable people. Now, there's some people who aren't here today. There's some people who aren't here each show. Jatovi and Kim, they offer valuable points of view that are worthy of respect and inclusion, and that's important. So, and everybody here, their views should be welcome too. But here's the thing: Mark is put in an impossible position when everybody is fighting and fighting. Mark is the host; he is in control. So, saying things like "I want to talk about this" or talking over each other, which I've been guilty of, and I've tried very much to change, defeats the purpose of the show to have constructive dialogue. I think we need to defer to Mark and allow him to do his thing and control the show and ask the questions he wants to ask. And if we're not willing to do that, then what's the point?
I want to get to this Taylor Lorenz thing where the Shaq's bringing up.
She's a disgrace.
Right. Well, so there was 3 things that I thought was going to be the main topics that we were going to talk about yesterday, and the 2 major ones was obviously the Petty verdict in New York, and the other one was the Taylor Lorenz thing, and of course the Taylor Lorenz thing also relates to something that happened in New York. So I wanted to get Adam's opinion and others about Taylor Lorenz's comments on Piers Morgan's show, where she said something along the lines of she felt joy at the murder of the CEO of United Health. She then tried to clarify it by saying, well, she didn't see any empathy. Joy was the wrong word. She didn't have any empathy for him. In fact, it was celebratory. And her justification for this was that the health executives of the United States are ripping off millions and millions of people, leaving them without health care. And so she finds some joy in his murder. Now, whilst I am one of the first people that says that I think that the healthcare system in the United States needs to be improved dramatically, celebrating the murder of somebody seems a bridge too far for me. And I'd love to know the opinion of Adam and others on the panel.
Just really
I
quickly.
think-
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead,
I'm sorry. Yeah, I was going to say just really quickly. Any celebration of murder, I have problems with, just like I had problems with the Saturday Night Live skit and some of the other things. And I brought up on the show yesterday that while I may be a backer to some degree of some of the things that BLM did and everything, I also saw that it was too far of one of the leaders after the acquittal to say that they should go into vigilante mode, because I am not a big supporter of vigilantism and everything along those lines. So definitely, I do think that sometimes even people on the left can go too far, because I forgot whether it was the New York or the New Jersey, but it was somebody that was affiliated with BLM that made this notion of condoning vigilantism, and I think that is problematic.
Well, let's have Adam, and then I'll go, because I've got the actual quotes from Morgan and Lorenz.
I think her comment was disgusting, and I think she tried to walk it back by adding context that she didn't intend to provide in the initial statement. Okay? No one should be murdered because you disagree with their views or their conduct on any issue. That would make everybody in society less safe. That would prevent diversity of perspectives from being expressed in a true marketplace of ideas. This man should be thrown in prison for the rest of his life. Okay, that's number one. Number two, the vilification of somebody who was brutally gunned down, a father of two, whose children and wife are now traumatized for the rest of their life. It's disgusting. You may not like somebody. You may despise somebody. You don't kill because you disagree or despise somebody. You engage in constructive dialogue and you foment change through the legislative and political process. Number three, it is a shame that people like Taylor Lorenz have a platform in society, and it shows you what I have said so long, that the biggest threat to this country is stupidity. And stupidity is becoming endemic to this society, and it is the true pandemic that will divide us and ultimately take this country into a state of lower quality, vulnerable, weaker than other countries. And we see that in our education system, where students don't know how to read, don't know how to do math, and have very low analytical and critical thinking skills. We need to be teaching them that, and we need to take this example as what America does not and will never represent.
So here's slightly later in the exchange. How could this make you joyful? Morgan asked. The guy is a husband. He's a father. He's been gunned down in the middle of Manhattan. Why does that make you joyful? Lorenz comes back, says, so are the tens of thousands of Americans that he murdered. So are the so United Healthcare is the largest healthcare provider in America. It covers healthcare for 107 million Americans, according to one article I read. And I've been reading about their policies, and their policies absolutely do impact the health and the deaths.
How so?
They have the highest rate of claim denial of any insurer. 32% of claims are denied. They corral doctors into overcoding. I mean, you can read articles, long.
But
articles.
you said that they're killing people. So what's the factual basis for that statement? Causal.
When you deny care, like somebody did an analysis using excess mortality, and when you deny care for Americans, they die at a higher rate.
Do you think?
Hold up, just a moment,
the CEO of United Healthcare, do you think in that position, Rick, you would also deny a certain percentage of claims?
Yeah, but the industry average is 16%. Kaiser denies 7%. I'm super lucky. I've got great insurance that I don't get denied for anything.
Now hold up just a moment, Rick, because sorry, Nick, did you want to?
Yeah, what I was going to say, because I've been in the industry for years, and here's one of the practical problems that this person may not be aware of. The policy doesn't cover that claim. The reason why they have so many people covered is it's cheap insurance. In other words, you're buying insurance at a low cost that doesn't cover a lot of stuff. And the reason it's so cheap is it doesn't cover that stuff. The reason they deny the claim is you're asking for them to cover things your policy doesn't cover. Okay?
And that so you didn't pay for.
I'll make it real simple. I'm going to pay $100 a year for my auto coverage, but it doesn't cover my car if I get in an accident. I get in an accident. I submit a claim. Then it's denied. And I go, oh, my claim's been denied. How unfair. No, it's because I was paying not enough premium to cover that.
That's 100% right.
But
Yeah,
anyway,
and that's
the
the issue, that they offer cheaper policies that make it more accessible for some Americans to be able to access some level of health insurance. But there are exclusions, right? And so to simply look at the raw numbers without drilling down on them and conclude that, they're a nefarious company. But I'll also just want to say this, because again, a very political issue. I find it incredible that Taylor Lorenz, I believe it was Taylor Lorenz, made a comment that there hasn't been any discussion about healthcare in the United States. There has been so much discussion about healthcare in your country that everybody else in the English-speaking world knows that there's a problem with your healthcare system. So the idea that there hasn't been any discussion is farcical. And things like being able to take your policy interstate and having more competition in the market, lowering the barriers to entry for new insurance companies and perhaps insurance companies provide health insurance in other parts of the world like Europe to be able to enter the market. Those are all things that can help to bring down some of the costs. And guess what? Guess who opposed it every single time it was brought up? It was the Democrats. And in fact, it was the very same Joe Biden who talked about not wanting there to be massive changes to the current healthcare system because it would deny union workers access to the health insurance that their unions had fought for them to get. So, this is a political issue, and it's not one side or the other that's responsible for it. It's both. I think that to assassinate somebody who is simply, an executive who's worked his way up and become the CEO, I'm assuming he's worked his way up to get there, and then become the CEO of a healthcare company, is absolutely ridiculous.
I just
And there's no justification for that whatsoever.
Who is Taylor Lorenz? I've never heard of him.
She's a reporter and a pundit. She used to work for the Washington Post. I don't know much about her, but
Well, let me give you some background. Let me give you some background, Nick. Let me give you some background on her.
Why are we listening to this person? You say she's a reporter. She's an editor.
Let me give you some background on her. So Taylor Lorenz, as a reporter, decided to dox the people behind a channel called Libs of TikTok. And what this channel would do is it would take, probably out of context a little bit, would take shorts of liberals saying things that was totally stupid and ridiculous on the internet, and create like a funny kind of video, a collation of these clips. Taylor Lorenz decided to use her powers as a journalist to dox the people behind this. After they suffered from all sorts of attacks and all sorts of issues, safety issues, and that for themselves and their families, somebody on the internet decided to retaliate by doxing Taylor Lorenz. Taylor Lorenz then sits down and gives an interview where she cries and complains about having been doxed and how horrible her life is. And people on the right said, but that's exactly what you did to other people. Somehow she's managed to maintain herself as a reporter. She's gone across and joined Vox with a V. And then recently with the assassination, this is one of the first things that she has said. And what has been very interesting is that in the comments section of many of these videos is that there tends to be a lot of people who either agree with her, or if they don't agree with her about celebrating it or being joyful, are saying that there is an issue with the healthcare system, and so no sympathy or empathy should be shown to any CEO who gets killed. I personally think, not being American, but I personally think that is one of the most offensive, insulting, and egregious things that people can say in an attempt to advocate for changes to the healthcare system.
Just really
so
quickly,
so I'm clear, counselor. She has no educational background, no experience, no working in the insurance industry whatsoever. She's just a talking head, and I could not ever get her seated as an expert witness in any court in the United States. Would that be correct, counselor?
Yes.
I don't know what experience she's done.
Just really quickly, hold on a second.
Adam, my question, you and I agree. There's no way this person's an expert. Why are we
Just really
listening?
quickly, because we only
You're
got
correct.
We're talking about it, Nick, because it's a big story. We're talking about it because it's a big story right now. Nick, we're talking about it because our viewers may be interested. We're talking about it because our viewers may be interested in something that is a big story right now in the media that intersects politics and the media. It's a massive story.
They need to have a background and a context about who this, quote, Taylor Lorenz is, which we've agreed is not an expert in bloody anything. I might as well go to the diner down the street here in Spain and listen to somebody yabber about what they think should have happened in the United Healthcare case, because that person down the street who sits in a diner has more experience than this Taylor Lorenz. I have no
well, perhaps that person that you find down the diner could be the new Democrat nominee.
This would be dismissed so fast, it'd make your head spin. It's over.
Correct.
So, do we have something else to discuss, Rick?
Yeah,
Let me finish up.
But once again, this is a big topic right now.
Let me finish up with some numbers. So I'm looking at net income of United Health. Last year, on revenue of $281 billion, they made profits of $23 billion. And their profits have they were fairly steady from 2007 to 2016, and then they exploded, going from $7 billion a year in profits to $23 billion a year in profits. And people who are pissed at United Health would say that a lot of those profits are driven by despicable practices.
Insurance companies invest.
One more thing. The guy, obviously you don't want to murder people because it's for being a CEO. And but this guy especially shouldn't have been murdered because he's only been in charge of United Health since 2021, and United Health has been up to despicable practices for much longer than that.
Well, okay. When you say that they've been up to despicable practices, what exactly are the despicable practices? You just talked about their profit margins as being an indicator of despicable practices. Insurance companies, as Nick will I'm sure, back me up on, insurance companies invest in money in investments over time that are liquid enough that they can draw on them when they need them, okay, but also, give them a return into the future. Now, what have we seen since 2016? We've seen the markets go up substantially, especially since 2020. We've seen the markets go up substantially. We've seen a massive increase in interest rates, and we've seen a huge increase in inflation. Is the increase in the profitability of United Health, is that any more significant than the average increase in the profitability of other companies?
I've got one article about their practices. One thing they do that this article attacks is, well, now they have sway over 10% of U.S. doctors. They buy out practices, they buy hospitals, and now 10% of hospitals work for United Healthcare. And one of their tactics is what they call overcoding, which is forcing doctors to diagnose patients as being sicker than they actually are, because that leads to United Health getting more money from the government for caring for these very sick people who aren't really that sick.
If that's the case, then it's the government's role to step in and say that you shouldn't be doing that, and it's up to the doctors to say that it's a breach of their ethics for them to overcode and diagnose patients with ailments they don't have. It's certainly not the CEO's fault, who's been around since 2021.
Okay,
and again, this issue would be in some way relieved if there was more competition into this marketplace.
Well, United Health isn't interested in more competition. They handle health for more than 100 million Americans. That's nearly a third of all Americans.
But
it's not up to them whether they're interested in competition or not. It's up to the free market. And the reason why more competition can't come in is because the free market's been distorted by lobbying and regulations.
Okay.
Yeah, you also have to ask the question, why? Why would United Healthcare, when you're saying it's despicable, it's horrible, it's the worst thing since sliced bread, the horrible thing, why would they cover more Americans than any other company? And we haven't got to the root of that problem. My thinking is the reason why it's cheap insurance. Like I said, it's insurance that just doesn't cover everything. And then people complain, oh, I stubbed my toe and they didn't reimburse me $10,000. Okay, it's because it doesn't cover stubbed toes. And so what the real problem we have isn't United Healthcare. It's the uneducated, stupid Americans many who are listening to our show, who's never read an insurance contract or have an insurance agent who doesn't represent them properly to understand the policy that they purchased. They didn't buy a golden plan that covers everything. They bought cheap, dirty, stupid insurance from a stupid carrier. And the first thing the agents would say, just realize you're probably not being covered for jack. And that's the reality.
Yeah, when I've been in the US, I've been injured twice, or I've had an issue twice. Once I had to go to the dentist. One time I had to go and see a doctor, right? And whilst I knew I was covered to see a doctor, I didn't know what the process was. So I just ring up a doctor and go and see them. Anyway, I finally went and saw them. And the deal was that I had to pay for it and then just submit the receipt to the insurance company and they reimbursed me. Now, I understand that a lot of people aren't in the position to be able to do that some of the time. But that was the policy I was happy with. Now, I've got international expats covered now, which costs me, I don't think I'm allowed to say how much it costs me, but it costs me a certain amount that covers me all over the world. And it covers, it covers everything I want it to cover. And it's quite expensive, but I take that coverage because I want to know that I'm covered. Now, I feel for those people who can't afford it, right? I really do feel for people who can't afford it, but that's not the insurance company's fault. If you want to make changes, get the government to make changes.
All right. So I'm looking at lobbying by United Health. Last year, they spent more than $10 million lobbying the federal government. This year, so far, they've spent $6 million. I mean, so yeah, which I think they're getting a good deal for their lobbying dollars. And yeah, I mean, they're complicit at the very least.
So Rick, can I assume now that you are beginning to jump on the anti-establishment side of the political aisle, that you don't like big corporations and big government coming in and passing laws and rules and regulations that distort the free market and make it unfair for everybody?
I've talked about that forever. I've always been.
Left has been on that side forever and a day.
So perhaps you should start donning a MAGA hat and join the side that currently even Cenk Uygur is flirting with that side at the moment.
No, thank you. No, thank you.
Yeah, like I said,
I'm gonna go. I gotta go back to sleep.
And it's time to end the show anyway. I didn't get to the whole notion of this whole athletes and how they're being targeted by a crime syndicate mafia and everything, but maybe we'll get to that on tomorrow and everything. But later, right now, we're going to get on out of here.